But I got to a point where I kind of started questioning things, where I just started seeing a lot of hurt, and I started seeing things not happen. Like after that many years, like, wait a minute, some of these prophecies aren't coming true. It's easy to be a critic within the first like week or so. Like, well, that prophecy didn't come true, and they say, well, the prophecy happened last week. Give it some time. And it's like, okay, well, I've been seeing people prophesied over for almost 2 decades now, and some of them still haven't come true, right? And so at some
Wow.
point, I started asking, like, okay, well, what do we do when a prophecy doesn't come true? Just a simple question like that, right? And you'd think you'd ask that question up front, but when you start realizing, oh, this family packed and moved their entire family, and
Wow.
that family fell apart,
Hmm.
and it didn't go well for them. So
Wow.
who's going to be held accountable for that? And you start seeing that happen, and that's when you start being like, okay, maybe there's something wrong here. And then that's when you start thinking about false prophecy, and that's what kind of started the trickle effect to then eventually leave entirely.
Wow. And then you left, but because when I check your YouTube, I'm gonna pull it up because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
saw that.
yeah,
So you I guess you left, and then somehow became an atheist, because that's what I see here. It
yeah,
says,
yeah, yeah,
alumni turned. Can you talk about that? And then we still want to circle back to
yeah,
the whole
yeah,
Bethel stuff, but I was just wanted to see how that plays into your overall
yeah,
experience.
yeah. So, yeah, I tell people often I'm an alumni turned atheist turned to Christ. Because so like the atheist part was shortly after that. I was still. This is also going to be part of the American Gospel film. So just a shameless plug for that.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
I was, yeah, I was a worship pastor at a church, and I started asking my pastor these questions about prophecy and healing, and really just starting to take a hard look at my faith, because I never really. It was the first time I was kind of like theologically self-aware. Like I never really thought of myself as a crazy charismatic, because that's all I ever knew. That's the only Christianity I knew. So, but the more I started being a bit more ecumenical and interacting with other churches and other people, I was like, well, why do you think we're so weird? Like, we're Christians too. But, I never thought of myself as like some aberrant charismatic in a way. Um, and so at that point, you start kind of getting more, I don't know, just more self-critical, like getting honest with your approach and your perspective. And that's when my questions weren't really getting answered well.
Mm.
Um, you know, the justifying false prophecy never really made much sense to me. Justifying why the way we were praying for healing, even though we weren't seeing healing, wasn't making sense to me. The way we weren't seeing people held accountable for the damaging prophetic words. And so really it was just a lack of good teaching and a lack of someone providing solid theological answers, that I eventually just left the faith entirely. I was just like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, I started realizing how much of it was just emotionalism, and how much I didn't have words for it. But I was listening to quite a few different atheist thinkers, and other people who were deconstructing. And I really
Oh.
was resonating with a lot of that. And also the Enneagram was really big. So I was really into the Enneagram. That I was finding more life and more like nourishment from listening to like Enneagram podcasts than I was like going to church.
Wow.
So I was like more into that than I was, reading my Bible. And so I eventually was just like, I don't think this is working for me. So I left the faith entirely. But I was still working as a worship pastor. I didn't tell my church. I wasn't like, I didn't want to bring people down with the ship with me. I didn't want to, like, I wasn't like a militant atheist where I'm like, this is all a sham and you all should leave. I was,
Yeah.
because I understood that, people had value in it. So I wanted to be respectful of that. So I just told my pastor that I was stepping down, and I gave him like a 9-month notice, because I know it takes a long time to find the worship pastor. It's a hard position to fill. And the
Hmm.
previous worship pastor before me left in a really quick hurry, and it really hurt the church. So I really wanted to make sure I was respectful of that. So I stopped taking pay. I just said, I'll keep leading worship for you. You can save your money. I'm going to get a job, but I'll keep leading worship for the next 9 months, and until you find someone to replace me. And so I basically was leading worship as an atheist,
Wow.
and
Wow.
I was,
So you were
yeah,
not to cut you off, you were essentially singing songs, possibly
oh yeah,
Hillsong
without doubt,
song,
oh yeah,
without a knowledge of God.
yeah, yeah. And the crazy thing is, like, after worship sets, people would come up and be like, wow, that was so good. Like, I felt the spirit on that. And I'm like, cool, I didn't feel a thing.
Wow.
Oh
But that
my
was because, like,
goodness.
I was starting to realize, like, when you lead worship for so long, you start there's just like any craft, what makes people move, so I'm like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can set up a killer bridge and put you in tears. Like, I know exactly how to do
Mm.
that. I know exactly what
Yeah.
chord progression to do, and I can sing like I'm really getting soft and intimate with something, and that's going to move you too. And I can come up with a quote unquote prophetic chorus, and like all those things I was doing, but it was just all you know just for
Did that
the job.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did that sort of also open your eyes? I mean, now looking back at it, it's a almost self-revelation.
Hmm.
Wait a minute. If I can, as a as an introvert atheist or in the closet atheist,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that and then have people come to me and say that they felt moved by the spirit. Was I also the subject of that?
Well, yeah,
Question
hundred
mark.
percent. Yeah, 100%. And then it also is like, and even now with my way I see church, like I am incredibly suspicious of anything.
Yeah.
like,
Wow.
like I have to get to the point where I have to make sure I'm not being too critical because I don't want to judge a worship leader with what they're doing because some more contemporary worship leaders can be absolutely doctrinally sound, theologically sound. I just get
Hmm.
really suspicious very quickly because
Yeah.
I know the tricks. So it's kind of
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like
Hmm.
I got the insider baseball.
Wow, that's interesting, Jesse. When you said that, I do remember in my own journey. I think you essentially you call yourself a closeted atheist at a point. That
Hmm.
was me many years ago, but then you keep going to church, but you're no
Yeah.
longer there. So when you said that, I could really relate
Hmm.
because you are doing that because you don't want to hurt people. Some
Right.
people are
Right.
very vocal, but some people are just closeted. But
Hmm.
really, the heart is already sealed. There was zero belief anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but then I think about some of these. You mentioned this. Some of these musicians who deconstruct. I really think that's what's going on. What you described, your own experience and your testimony is pretty much what these people are going through. So they have the form of godliness, but they've denied their
Hmm.
power. But they continue to sing
Hmm.
songs. They continue to lead thousands. And people, I can't even imagine how, I don't know, is God even being glorified, even though this person doesn't believe? I don't know, but that may be something
Yeah,
you can shine
I,
some
I
light
I
on.
I think a lot about Paul in Philippians, where he talks about the people who are preaching. I forget the exact passage, so forgive me, but where he talks about preaching Christ falsely or preaching the wrong gospel. But he says, I still give thanks that Christ that the Savior's name's being spread. Like it's this weird. I have a hard time with that passage because like Paul's being critical of these guys' false teaching, but he's also celebrating the fact that the name of Jesus is being spread.
Yeah.
And so it's like I struggle with that a little bit, and it's not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's like the Bible makes it clear we are to protect the gospel in purity and truth and present it that way.
Yeah.
100% agree with that. But I also
Hmm.
I think that's the idea that God can still draw a straight line with a crooked stick. So like even with like me as terrible as I was in that situation, God can still be glorified in all of that. I still think he can. Is it ideal? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I don't think it's not a way to justify doing it.
Right.
Um, but I also think that there's a lot of people. The way Jeff Durbin puts it a lot, he does a lot of ministry with Mormons, and he talks about when
Hmm.
Mormons come out of Mormonism, they often are not just leaving Mormonism. Like they're leaving. Some of them are leaving their family. They're leaving their community. Some of them are leaving their job. Like leaving Mormonism is leaving everything.
Wow.
And so I think a lot of people get caught up in that. Like even for myself, leaving charismatic church literally meant leaving my income. Like it literally meant leaving that behind. So I think some people get to that point where they're like, this is the only way I can make money. So they just keep making money and they keep doing their thing.
Hmm.
And then I don't think there's a malice behind it, but it's also not biblical. So
Correct.
it's like it's a hard dichotomy to work through, I guess.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
John, do you want to add anything there? Or maybe we can jump to the next question.
I was just gonna say the comment you made on having a form of godliness. Paul made that comment in Second Timothy chapter 3,
Yeah.
on verse 5, where he says, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. From such turn away.
There
We
you
ought to
go.
turn away from from from
Hmm.
from from, from those people.